In a second-hand set of dimensions, on an astral plane that was never meant to fly, through wavering star mists, see the Great Atuin. Drifting onwards through space, atop the shell of the world's turtle, are 4 giant elephants, upon whose broad shoulders rests the Discworld. Welcome to Dining Table Discworld. We're reading through the Discworld novels and discussing them at our dining table. Be aware there will be spoilers for the current book and others in the series.
Hello, welcome to Dining Table Discworld. I'm Dave.
I'm Kathy.
And today we are entering interesting times as we talk about the book Interesting Times, which is the 17th book in the Discworld series, published in 1995. So, Kathy, what is the synopsis?
Somehow, Rincewind has returned. Again. The patrician receives an unexpected message from the Agacian Empire on the wealthy counterweight continent, demanding the Great Wizard. The unseen university faculty eventually find and magically transport Rincewind from the lonely island where he'd been peacefully dreaming of potatoes. He is then sent to the walled Agacian Empire, where he coincidentally encounters Cohen the Barbarian with a band of old barbarians. Two flowers there too, completing a light fantastic reunion, except for Bethan, who was never mentioned again. A polite revolution is fermenting, and Rincewind runs away. An ambitious nobleman schemes, and Rincewind runs away. Cohen's small horde face overwhelming odds, and Rincewind, after refuting his legendary status, runs right into it. Just as a content note, this book contains orientalism, and rape jokes, and a bit of fatphobia. So do skip if you don't want to hear about that. We will be discussing these to some extent.
Okay, so let us begin. What was your initial thoughts?
I mean, the first line is killer.
Yes.
Yeah. There is a curse, they say. May you live in interesting times. But we'll not discuss Roundworld in 2025.
No, that's a whole different podcast.
That's quite a few different podcasts that already exist. So I only read this once before, and that was when I was kind of collecting all of them and just buying up all the ones up to whatever points I got to at the time, which I guess that would have been in probably the early noughties. So, yeah, I don't really remember this very well, and now I'm a bit like, I mean, it's disappointing compared to a lot of his other work, and obviously there's some stuff in it which I don't like, which, see the content note, which we'll discuss. I mean, it is 90s fantasy, and as we'll discuss the stuff that fits with that, but again, it doesn't feel like it's a better quality, and I mean, the Rincewind books I enjoyed more. Sorcerer is certainly up there, and yeah, I mean, it's got some interesting ideas, but yeah.
I think if you've hopefully listened to our previous episodes, especially the ones on the Wizards books, we're not necessarily a big Rincewind fan.
I don't think it's even Rincewind himself. I think it's the type of stories he's in sometimes.
I certainly, this story does him a disservice. There's lots of elements that when I started reading it, I remembered it more, but if you'd have asked me what happened before I started reading it, I'd have gone, well, Rincewind goes to China?
Yes.
Which, I mean, is a plot, it's a plot description, certainly. I think I like yours better, but it's certainly a plot description. And yes. I think it's got some interesting ideas, which we'll talk about some of the interesting ideas later, but it just gets bogged down by the bad stuff. And I do feel that kind of the story just kind of happens around Rincewind. It's not really fun when your main protagonist doesn't really do anything to engage with the story.
Well, I think we'll get into how this is actually kind of a Rincewind at its core a bit. Yeah, there's other stuff going on that's more impactful, I suppose. Also, this very much feels like a riffing book, not a railing book, as we've discussed. He's riffing on things, not railing against anything, which is not necessarily bad.
No.
There are other books that are just riffing on things, like moving pictures, soul music.
Yes, soul music is an especially good riffing book.
Yes. I think also, we've said before we weren't sure where would be a good starting point for Rincewind, because the first book of the series isn't necessarily the best starting point for the sub-series. But I think we might have to say it's Colour of Magic, because we're too far past anything now.
I mean, yes. I mean, I certainly wouldn't give this to someone and say, hey, this is a great Rincewind book.
No.
So yes, we have to go back to that. And again, it is a core Rincewind style of book in that it's, look, here's another part of the Discworld.
Yes, he does do a lot of, here's the disc and various other bits, watch as they speed by.
Yeah, and again, we've got definitely throwback to Colour of Magic with the gods playing dice and their game of
feels like more of a framing device here. It's less all through it, which it sort of was in Colour Magic.
Well, you get it mentioned at the start, and then it doesn't get mentioned again.
Was there something at the end?
No. That's the thing. It's
not even a framing device. Then,
no, it's kind of there at the start as kind of an excuse for the plot to do what it does, but it doesn't actually frame it.
I mean, it's definitely a sequel to like Fantastic.
Yeah,
but not as direct a one as like Soul Music is to Mort, for example. So
no,
just kind of bringing back various characters from that book.
Yeah,
but in like a different guy's country.
Okay, so let us get on with our notes. So the Agatian Empire.
Yes. We're just going to say Agatian because I think that's how it sort of makes sense to us to say. I think there's different ways of pronouncing it. You know, you could do different things with that, but I'm just...
We're going to go with what's easiest for us.
Is it... I don't know if this is right. I thought, is it a joke like Agatian, like there's a gate in because it's got walls?
Potentially. I was just worried...
I might be labouring that a bit, I don't know.
A gate, as in the stone...
I don't think that was mentioned anywhere, but there are
walls.
No,
but I mean, that's the...
And walls sometimes have gates.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
It's interesting because obviously the main information we have about the Agatian Empire before is around Two Flower and Colour of Magic, and it's very different to what we see here.
It feels like we've shifted time frame without really shifting to the wrong direction.
Well, because as we discussed in the Colour of Magic episodes, Two Flower is very much sort of, you know, like late 20th century Japanese style tourist, or East Asian sort of style tourist. But he's just an insurance clerk, and he's gone on holiday.
Yeah.
And that's sort of it. I mean, the suggestion is he's perhaps being a bit more adventurous than other people because they don't see any other people from there, you know, coming to Ankh-Morpork. But he clearly knows all about it. He's read loads of books. He's got quite excited about the whole thing. Oh, yeah,
because, you know, it's all the things he wants to see and do. He knows all about the famous heroes.
You know who Kohan the Barbarian was.
Yeah, you know, so, and Morpork exists at all. Yeah, and instead we get this walled country that is basically going, no, the walls are there for your protection. Outside is just hungry ghosts. There is nothing out there except hungry ghosts.
Yes, it seems to have quite suddenly gone backwards to isolationist Japan.
Yes.
But with the Great Wall of China surrounding it. I guess we'll get into that a little bit as well. But,
yes.
But yeah, it does just seem like, oh, this is strange, because it seemed quite modern. You know, he had the iconograph. I mean, the luggages are still about, but yeah, it just feels like it's gone backwards, but the chess was always like that. It doesn't... I think Terry's decided to do a particular thing with it, and we're just maybe supposed to have quite a vague, hazy memory of the information from Colour of Magic, because the other thing is also the reason Rincewind and Two Flower could talk to each other was that Two Flower was using language of another country that's supposed to be near the Agatian Empire, and then Rincewind knew that language. I mean, I know he drops that after a bit because it's difficult to write a whole couple of books that way. So it sort of seems a bit like Two Flower must have been quite worldly, and that doesn't seem to make sense.
And the Emperor is a very different, you know, in interesting times. He's this sadistic kind of monster that really doesn't want his people to know anything about the outside. He wants them controlled and, you know, cowed to him.
Well, sadistic Emperor is a pretty absolute power kind of plot.
Yeah,
fancy plot point.
In Colour of Magic, though, the idea was, you know, he let him go out on holiday and just implied to the patrician at the time, you've got to look after, you know, you must look after because otherwise I would invade you with great military might.
Oh yeah.
And instead,
we're just supposed to be hazy on the details of this.
Yeah, I think
we did wonder if it was a different patrician though. Maybe it was a different emperor. How long has this been?
I mean,
we've had a discussion about timelines.
Timey-wimey. I don't. Well, because the emperor is supposed to be quite old, so.
Well, you could have schemed Twain's being emperor at an old age. That happens in this book.
Anyway, so we've got a very different view of the Agatian Empire here. And then we sort of roll right into the first of the bits.
Yeah, there's just a lot of Orientalism because it's just this big mishmash of China and Japan, or Chinese and Japanese stereotypes.
We presume so. We don't have enough knowledge of other, you know, cultures in that area to pick out if there is anything else in there, but.
Because sometimes you'd be like, oh, that's a Japanese thing and that's a Chinese thing. You're like, but they have their own, you know, different cultures and different histories and stuff. And it's all just like rolled together. So it's like, oh, yeah, Orientalism. I mean, and we're ignorant, but I'm sure he did more research writing it than we did reading it. But on the other hand, it's a bit like, oh, okay, this feels a bit uncomfortable. Like, I'm sure there's some stuff in here that is very stereotypical and kind of ignorant.
Yeah.
And I suppose whether Pratchett was trying to send up that that's how a lot of Western places see East Asia. But I feel like if that was what he was doing, it wasn't like quite as clear as when he's doing stuff like that other times.
I mean, let's be honest. If you're gonna riff off something, a stereotype, you got to pick your stereotypes so that people know what you kind of know what you're riffing off.
I suppose he's choosing stuff that would be popular in the West because that was probably the audience he was writing to.
I think now it feels, let's be honest. If this was the worst problem with this book, I think we could have got past it a lot easier.
I'd probably the kind of thing I'd warn somebody about, but I might still be a bit like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
So one of the things that is in it, there's sort of a thing about how, so when Rincewind first encounters Cohen again, Cohen says something about how the people are there, and he sort of describes it as, they're very suppressed. He sort of describes it as they have whips in their minds, which is a really interesting way of describing things. And again, if he was at railing level, not riffing level, I feel like that would be a whole big thing.
Yeah.
So the people are so cowed and so kept in their place that, I mean, I said before revolution, there's sort of people who are being a revolution, but that's not the word they're using. And, they're doing slogans and posters and signs, but they're all incredibly polite. And But there's also the fact that the revolution is actually, an AstroTurf campaign, in that it's largely being arranged by a powerful noble for his own ends, or at least he's funding it and directing it. It seems to be something that existed a little bit, but he's just using it as an excuse to, stir things up and gain power. But all the members of this, who are usually like kind of kids whose parents have been disappeared, they're coming up with very mild and meek messages, but then again, you can be executed for putting up a poster. So, yes, that's bad enough. And I suppose it's the idea of tyrannical, oppressive regime where, you do a mild thing and the sentence is death, and that does cow people. And so the social pressure and the opposition do the work for you. So it's like kind of that, obeying in advance, they're all complying in advance thing, which is obviously very relevant now.
Just a little.
Like, oh, well, you've not been told this isn't allowed, but, they clearly won't like it, so we'll just not do that, or we'll just do this, even though it's not the law yet. And, too relevant, but this kind of feels a bit more like it's an adventure rather than exploration of humanity or evolution or anything like that, particularly.
Yeah, I think it could have been an interesting point to kind of, put forward, but I think it just kind of fall by the wayside, but it's...
I mean, it's in the mix, but it's only in the mix. It's not a focal point. I don't think
there's much. Well, I think the barbarians are the focal point, really.
I mean, Two Flower doesn't seem like somebody who has a whip in his mind, and he still seems the same. He's always cheerful, and he assumes things will work out. And he isn't like cowed. He's kind of excited, but I think he also, and I know Rincewind sort of, this is why he's a good foil for Rincewind in some respects, because Rincewind's always expecting the worst, and things are going to go wrong. How are things going to go wrong, and trying to get out of it? And 2000 was like, everything will be fine. It's lovely, and isn't it nice? And this was the thing that was such a danger in Ankh-Morpork, but that was almost like he was a fish out of water, so he didn't know. Like there's that film, The Man Who Knew Too Little, or something, isn't there, where some guy blunders through all this stuff because he's just ignorant, which kind of seemed a bit how Two Flower was being. But this is where he's from, but he still doesn't seem to think anything bad can happen.
No.
And it's a sort of kind of a different problem, which again, Pratchett doesn't go into very much at all, but the idea that everything will be fine. Nothing bad will really happen. It'll all be sorted out. It'll be absolutely fine. And that, I think, is another problem we have nowadays. Or probably have for a long time, but feels very strong nowadays. So people just being like, it'll be fine. Oh, well, they've said they'll do this. They won't really do it. Surely it won't be that. Which isn't quite how Two Flows, and I don't think that's something Pratchett's doing, but it did strike me as another thing that happens. Kind of comfort and privilege leads to the assumption that nothing bad will happen, so people don't think of the worst case scenario and vote for stuff that's clearly a very bad idea.
But I think the interesting thing with Two Flower, though, is he's supposedly this insurance clerk, though. He's not.
Yeah.
He's not somebody who is in the court or someone with wealth. I mean, he's got a luggage, but that turns out to be not such a big a deal as we thought.
In fact, that luggage may be a little bit atypical, like
possibly defective. Or, it's very different.
It seems ill-tempered a bit compared to the others. So but no, you're right. He's not that privileged, really, is he? No. But that's why it makes it so weird. Because one of the things that he kind of accidentally, unintentionally writes this big revolutionary text, but it's just what I did on my holidays.
Yeah.
And he's just writing an account of travelling.
And I suppose also you have to think this is a character who we find out right at the end. His wife was killed by the big bad.
Yeah. So in this book, we discover that not only was Two Flower married, but he also has two daughters. And Rincewind's really surprised. I think acting for the audience were all a bit like, what? And Stephen was like, yeah, I'm sure I mentioned it many times. And Rince was like, no, you absolutely did not. And yeah, his wife died. But yeah, he didn't seem angry about anything. But the fact is that him writing that book, one of his daughters comments that she's read what was not a book, text.
Pamphlet.
Something. She says she can see from reading it that Rincewind isn't a great wizard, because obviously Two Flowers written it with his own idea and he thinks Rincewind's really impressive. She's like, no, I just see somebody who's got lucky and managed to get out of things, because she's a bit brighter, making the assumption that her mother must have been quite bright. But it's even less clear where his optimism comes from. I mean, obviously he was wealthy compared to Morporkian.
Yes.
But yeah, he does seem to be probably fairly low in the Asian Empire, I guess.
I don't know. I think there's obviously, I partly Ratchet trying to bring Two Flower in and not worry too much about what was said.
I guess it's sort of like that thing where you've got the kind of buddy, it's like a film thing, isn't it? We have the buddy cop thing or something where you've got two people from different cultures, and the first film is always like, oh, a foreigner in America, because they're usually American. Yeah. And so, although I suppose Hot Fuss does it, but with like City and Country in the UK. But anyway, you've got somebody goes to another person's turf, and they form a relationship, and then in the sequel they go to the other guy's place. What are those films with Jackie Chan and
Rush Hour?
Probably, yeah. There you go. Because isn't one of those American then ones in like Hong Kong? I just realised I didn't purposely mean to shoot something in East Asia, and that just popped into my head. But there we go. But a little bit more about the Asian stuff is there don't seem to be any non-humans there, which is interesting. It's
certainly,
it's never described that there are any.
No, and let's be honest, trolls stand out a mile away. So either they have them in the Empire, but they live in their own communities, and we just don't see them.
Well, that would be certainly a very optimistic view of that.
That's
the other thing is, if you write a thing and certain groups of people aren't there, it's like, well, where did they go? Is that it's a choice to exclude, although maybe not a conscious one.
Yeah, it's we don't see a lot of the Empire, let's be honest.
But we do see a lot of people, because Rincewind comments on how crowded the city was.
I was going to say, we do see the capital. We are in the capital city. So, it's a bit of a... You'd hope that they were there, and, trolls stand out a mile away. So not having them in the crowd scene, you don't have to say, oh, look, there's the trolls, but... Well,
I think just with the amount of... Because the whole point is Rincewind finds it's incredibly claustrophobic and crowded, and every little bit of space is full of people. Just made me think, because obviously you and I are both from the countryside.
Yes.
In England, which is predominantly very white. And we now live in quite a diverse city, and that's fine. But I recall a friend of ours who's from here saying that when they go other places, they're always a bit like, why is everyone the same? They find it quite weird. Even if the majority of people that they're around are the same race as them, they're still a bit like, well, this seems a bit odd, because they're just used to being somewhere quite diverse. And it occurs to me that Rincewind growing up in Ankh-Morpork, where there is a lot of diversity, it feels like the kind of thing that might be noticed. But again, I don't think it's the kind of thing that would have been written about, particularly in the 90s. So there's that. It's just a thing I noticed. But yeah, also it doesn't mention what anyone from... Well, it doesn't particularly mention what Two Flower looks like. No. He's drawn a certain way.
I think that's always the thing, too. It's implied and people have inferred, but there's never any specifics.
Well, again, it's not... this is the problem thing with other countries in Discworld, that, it's all stereotype, but it's not exactly that, is it? But yeah, I mean, the only time race is mentioned is a bit at the very end, which is a sort of follow-up to the next book. Basically, it's only mentioned for black people and not in any other ways. I mean, I guess we'll get to that.
We'll get to that towards the end, yes.
And then there's a bit where... So Rincewind meets the Agatian Dibbler.
Yes.
Disembowel myself honourably.
I believe that is the,
Dibhala. And he's obviously absolutely believes, the official word, there are only hungry ghosts outside the wall. Absolutely, yes, sure.
Yep.
But if there were people outside the wall who wished to trade, what might they be interested in? And then...
Probably hypothetically, of course.
He lists all these things that one thinks of, those are things from East Asia. It's like fireworks and paper, and, I mean, they mentioned the iconographs as well, like the tech. Tea also. Yeah. And the only thing that Sir Terry hadn't included that's a traditional, this was invented in East Asia thing, is paper money. Yeah. At which point Rincewind like, well, why would we want that? Just use coins.
Yes.
Obviously, that's, again, coming even later.
We'll get to that as well.
But yes, it seems like he kind of just recreated so much stuff in Ankh-Morpork that it's like, we don't really need that.
You've got nothing to offer us. Yeah, we're gonna touch it. We're gonna hit one of the.
We're gonna hit, yeah. So, well, this combines both orientalism and the fatphobia, because at one point when there's kind of a chase through the imperial palace, we get the sumo stable, because there's basically a load of sumo wrestlers who obviously that's a Japanese thing rather than a Chinese thing. And those gentlemen are athletes. I mean, they're a particular size, but that's because that's what their sport requires. And athletes do come in a lot of different sizes.
Hats off to those guys.
But in this, they're treated like big, stupid animals.
Yeah.
It's so unpleasant. It's so unpleasant. And the thing is, right, okay, it's the 90s. Fat phobia was everywhere, and it was terrible. And I think perhaps it's writing as a visual gag, the idea you've got like one skinny guy running away and then a load of fat guys chasing him.
That would have worked really well, except he undercuts it by making them stupid.
Yeah,
making them animalistic.
Because they've got people minding them, like they're animals. Basically, Rincewind runs into their sauna and then they all chase him. So I think the idea is they're also probably wearing towels. Yeah, it's a visual gag, but narrative voice is kind of cruel about it. And, I mean, it kind of says that Rincewind doesn't judge as he runs through, because Rincewind's usually just running and isn't judging. But it just feels like the text is judging, and it's unpleasant.
Yeah, it's like, as I said, you could do a brilliant, visual in words, gag, the running through the Imperial Palace, because let's be honest, the walls are made of paper, so they are just going through it a lot. And Rincewind and all these courtiers and that, and guards and sumo wrestlers. God, that's Benny. Play the Benny Hill music. You're off to the races. But just by making them,
it makes it very clear that,
and dumb and having minders that have got to get. It's
very much suggested that they're not just their servants; they're like keepers.
Yeah, it's like they've been roused up. Oh, it's not time. They only ate 2 hours ago, and then you sort of get these sticks that they've got to herd them with. It's like no. So
that's nasty.
Yes.
Now, do we want to go through the other thing we don't like, and then we can just go to the stuff that was better? We'll just cover the whole content note now.
Yeah, we might as well, yes.
So, well, I guess this book made me feel better about the wizard faculty.
I mean, we'll take silver linings.
So, you have Cohen the Barbarian. His whole thing is he's this old barbarian warrior who's, like, in his 90s. But, he's survived this whole time, but obviously he's old. And that was the whole thing in, like, Fantastic. And it was, kind of a bit funny, a bit interesting. But now he has this whole group called the Silver Horde, who are basically also barbarians who are geriatric. And you've got things like, some of them can't hear very well, one of them's in a wheelchair. And, they've done this stuff all their lives. But it's just another group of really horrible old men, which I've said is already kind of bit of an issue with the faculty. But they're also violent and sexual. And also sexually violent because, just kind of, we're going to discuss the rape jokes now. Because, the Horde's attitude to women is so hard to read. I mean, it's actually, in some respects, only a little bit worse than the wizard one, because there's this whole, you get these all-male groups, and like, women, such mystery, such weirdness, what are these strange creatures, which is just othering.
Yeah.
I mean, just because a group's all-male doesn't mean they can't understand or relate in some sort of normal human way to women.
Some group parts of the internet might argue with that.
But then what happens is rape is just used in this really jokey way. So it sort of starts off with, it's sort of centered on the Horde and their frailty. And, I think it's a kind of a joke about impotence. And, they're sort of talking about raping and pillaging. And there's some sort of joke about like, he can't rape anymore. And you're like, am I supposed to feel sad about that? And sorry for the rapist? I think not. Or like there's the idea about getting, like rape and pillage confused. And again, it's not great. But I mean, 90s fantasy was pretty full of this sort of stuff.
There was, unfortunately.
So it's sort of, I guess, is working in the milieu it's in. But, it's uncomfortable to read. And then there's a character in it called Teach, who we'll get to a bit more later, who's basically a geography teacher they've picked up to teach them civilization. Not a Gatian civilization, just, you can't really say Western in this because it's a circle.
No, it's Hubwoods.
Hubland?
Hubland, yes. Something like that, yeah.
And so his thing is sort of teaching them civilization. So a lot of that is like telling them not to swear. So there's a joke where one guy keeps using very toned down language, which is kind of funny, like darn them all to heck. But then at one point he also goes, I'm going to teach how to do social intercourse. And there's one guy who goes, at everything. And you're like, all right. But basically, he gets this guy who they've already suggested is a rapist, to go and chat to a lady selling some ducks. And the idea is, oh no, you need to talk nicely. And it's like, I mean, okay, I know the barbarianism is probably quite masculine, but you've surely met and spoken to or interacted with women in some way. It's just, ugh.
Well, I mean, Cohen managed it fine with Bethan.
Well, this is the thing, Cohen, and obviously, I mean, Kanina had a mother, right? It's unclear if Cohen ever had much to do with his daughter. And there's a bit where Pratchett kind of is realising this is bad and poking fun at it. So there's a bit about him making painful conversation with a representative of half of the world's humanity, which kind of feels like Pratchett going, isn't it silly that, like, this is half of people? Isn't it silly this is, like, a problem? But it's undercut by that because it's kind of showing that this is the baseline.
Yeah.
Because the fact is that Teach, because he's always worked in, like, boys' schools, he's not great with women either.
No.
And also, and then later there's this thing that, he's got a date with the lady selling ducks. It's like, well, why would this woman go on a date with this? It's like, if you just talk nicely to women, you can still get what you want out of them. It's like, no, that's not what we're here for. Oh. So, yeah, it just positions women as a way of getting sex, but with a different approach. And then there's a bit where Teach, he's been teaching the Horde, and he admires them all. They're unpolished, they're uncultured, but there's, they're good guys underneath. And I'm like, well, yeah, because you're not a woman,
Yeah.
And also, I mean, I say not a woman, I mean, obviously, it's not women who are just the only victims of rape, but kind of like having rape as a jokey thing doesn't help. And I know it's 90s fantasy, but I expected better of Pratchett. I mean, one joke wasn't even particularly funny. It was just this random thing where it got mentioned.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't even understand where the joke is in that. It just got mentioned.
I think there wasn't a joke there. I think it was just playing on the character who kept saying it, but it didn't actually make it funny.
No,
it was literally just a drop in
and the thing is, I mean, I think there's a historical thing. This was a thing you could joke about more at the time it was written, but yes. The problem with rape jokes as a broader cultural issue is that they do normalise rape and sexual assault. Because people have done studies, people have interviewed rapists, and what they have found is that they think it's just a normal thing. All men do it. Those guys just think they happen to have got caught. But that any man would do this if given the opportunity or in the right circumstances, which is horrible to both men and women. And so people making rape jokes, even if they would never do that, it just normalises it and just kind of provides cover for rapists and potential rapists because they just think, it's a regular thing. And also, again, like if women could solve the problem, it would be sorted, but we can't. Like it has to be men that do this and point out, no, that's not right. And again, like I said before, not all rape victims are women. Male rape victims are also harmed by this culture because it's not supposed to happen. Again, because the jokes are always like, it's what a man does to a woman. And so then if men have that happen, a lot of them can't even identify that's what happened to them because it's outside of the narrative they'd have. And it means they can't get support and, they can be in a very bad situation. So, and I just feel like last time we did this kind of content, though, it was about from the point of view of somebody who was being groped, who was being sexually assaulted. And the point was the person doing the sexual assault was clearly a bad guy. Like that's what it was being used for. And here they're just supposed to be... I mean, it's supposed to be historical, it's supposed to be something that happened before, but, like, it's still just there.
Yeah, it's kind of like we're supposed to be sympathetic towards them, but they're not nice people. I think there's some interesting stuff you can do around the old barbarian, someone whose his life has been fighting and heroing. And,
living by the sword.
Yeah, and I think if you want a good example of it, it's in Joe Abercrombie's First Law trilogy, is Logan Nine Fingers, not quite as old as Cohen, but again, and someone who has lived that kind of lifestyle for such a long time. He's done it all, and yes, those are grimdark novels, and they do touch a little bit on sexual assault, but nowhere near as badly as we've got in this.
Well, I think in this it's kind of being used as a joke, and it's like we all now know that's not funny. It is mentioned quite a bit.
In a grimdark book.
That's true. Again, I guess 90s fantasy, but I'm not saying that's excused it, but I think that's like the context it's in. But still,
yes,
yeah. So this is the main reason I'm not recommending this book to anyone. But I guess warning people now. I mean, the thing is also that you're having this group of quite fighty male characters who are a bit of a mass. I mean, you've got the wizards who are a bit of a mass.
Yeah.
Kind of vaguely know their names, I don't know. These guys, I'm not even learning their names, sorry, no. But later, he'll do this better with the Feagles, but that specifically has no sexual content whatsoever.
Yeah.
But we're not there yet. We're this.
Yes, well, we've got to get through this to get to the good stuff.
I guess so. Did you want to go into just talking about Cohen teacher bit since we're on the barbarian
we might
bit?
as well get through this and get clear of it.
So obviously Cohen, he's been this barbarian lifestyle, and it's clear from early on he's got this whole plan. Like, he's obviously aiming for something quite big, and each time they do something, it's like, it's obviously part of a plan, and that's why he's brought Teach along, because he wants them to learn civilization. And it's quite bold, because basically they go into the palace, sneak in, use subterfuge, which isn't their natural.
Again, Teach helps them with rather than kicking down the door and running through the gates.
Yeah, they disguise themselves, they sneak in through the sewer system. Teach is a geography teacher, which means he's good at scoping things out, apparently. I don't know if teaching geography makes you good at heists, but there we go. But yeah, they get in there, and then the whole point here, well, if it was a leverage episode, it'd be like, let's steal an empire.
Yes.
Because basically, Cohen goes in, they go to where the emperor is, and because the emperor is kept in this walled-off city...
Again, forbidden city, yeah.
He goes in and he says to everyone, right, anyone who knows who the emperor is, and it's like, right, well, you don't, and, basically has some sword points. Yeah.
I am the emperor. So, who's going to argue with me?
Yeah, so it's very bold. It's a bit kind of boys' own, but yeah, it's like this idea that, you can take an empire without shedding any blood, except then what happens later is actually there are armies and there is a fight, and Cohen says to Teach, well, we tried, but there always had to be some sort of reckoning. But it's just this idea of, them being outside of civilization, even in the Hublands, and they've got something to teach them civilization, but it's weird that they didn't get a negation person to teach them how the civilization of the place they were going to, invade. It's like, we're going to learn civilization, but civilization where we're from, it's like, well,
I think it's almost a case of.
I mean, the scale is bold, but
they go through going through the city, and they should have stood out like a sore thumb, because they yes, they were being, I'm going to use air quotes, civilized, but they weren't being civilized for that group, that area. So later on, they go and fight some ninjas, and I thought that was quite a good section on these people. They've been fighting all their life. They know how to survive. The ninjas are there doing their, karate moves and, lots of shouting and posturing. And they're
I don't think was actually a ninja thing.
No.
Which we have tried to tell our kid, because sometimes we'd be like, ninja. And I'm like, ninjas are quiet.
Again,
it's a stereotype. It's like cartoon
I think the idea they're supposed to be elite warriors, but they kind of come off more like ninjas diving and jumping around.
There's a lot of showboating, isn't there? But a lot of because at one point one of them go, if you shout about what you do before you do it, then we know how to defend against it. But
the horde are just kind of, they're not there when they're getting punched, because they just move out. That they're not.
They move out of the way.
They dispatch these elite warriors with no real problem, because it's like, well, this is just what we do. We are the best at what we do.
It's like ingrained in them. It's like muscle memory. So they aren't at their physical peak, but it doesn't matter, because it's just what they've always done. And then when the battle comes, it's a solid idea. These 7 guys against a big army, but we'll get to that. But then Teach kind of gets all excited because he'd hung back before. But then when it's kind of like the final battle, again, the idea that maybe the barbarians underneath every civilized person, which but and he's like, they give him a sword, and it's like, what do I do? And how do, because he's been teaching them, and he asked them for instruction, they'd be like, you just put the pointy end in somebody else. it's like
very basic.
But I don't think it's explain what they do, they just do it.
No, it is just what they are.
In this, it seems that Cohen's first name, because he's always just been Cohen the Barbarian, is Genghis?
I mean, Genghis Cohen.
I mean, that's clearly the joke, but it's just something gets dropped into the text. At first, I was like, is that like a title or something?
I mean, with his barbarian horse.
Yeah, I mean, and I get it. It's a reference to the Mongols, but
yeah, but
it just seems to be dropped in there a bit, like, okay.
Moving on.
So it occurs to me, though, that we haven't spoken about main character. We've perhaps put a little bit of time to Rincewind, because this is kind of the pure form of him. He's been somewhere on his own for a long time. He's dreaming potatoes. He gets taken back to Ankh-Morpork. He almost can't believe he's there. Rushed into the square. Various Ankh-Morpork things happen to him, like he gets mugged and he eats one of Dibbler's sausages.
He got 3 of Dibbler's sausages.
Oh, no, that was it, yes. Because he's just been away from home, although it was boring, but he likes boring. But then the wizards send him off. And it's kind of him at his most Rincewind, because then he just spends the whole time, he doesn't even know where he's running to, but it doesn't matter, he's just running from.
I'd like to say, but the only reason he ends up volunteering to be sent, because they want the Great Wizard, and they worked out... Wizard, sorry. And they've worked out it is Rincewind. But he's basically going, nope, Not a chance, not a hope. Basically, he gets, much like Vetinari does to Moist later on, pointed out that, so you've been impersonated a wizard, and this could be very bad for you. But perhaps if you did a great service for wizard kind,
for the university,
then we could perhaps look over this. And he's like, oh, fine.
Yes.
So and he's not running. He's not volunteering to go there because he wants to.
No. He's being forced into it, and then when he's there, he just runs the whole time, which is his pure form. But, I mean, he's never given anything to turn around for, which was the thing I liked in Sorcery. And had that been the end of his story, it would have been fun, because at that point, Rincewind runs and runs and runs from danger, and then goes, no, I have to turn around because it's wizardry is who I am. And he just doesn't seem to have that anymore. Although saying that, at least with the running, he means no harm. He does try to help. And I think Rincewind's an interesting idea about, like you say, anti-hero. And normally that's a bit like, here's a guy who's morally grey, but is still going to fight a lot.
Yeah.
And Rincewind's actually like a proper not even anti-hero. What's another word that's anti, like past hero?
Yeah.
To the other side. Pratchett does that joke a bit with other things. But the point is, he's like, no, I'm going to run away. And he's like, well, cowardice is fine because that's how I survive and that's how I live. The purpose of fear evolutionary is to be like, this is dangerous and you should be away from here now, or like have caution. And as somebody who's been scared of various things in her life and is a bit like, no, I am in fact not doing that. Yeah, I think there's a thing for that. And the point is, and it's never suggested Rincewind's any not male, not masculine because of that.
No.
So I think there's sort of something positive in there. I don't quite have the words for it exactly because it is, but he doesn't seem to be judged particularly for running away. And in fact, it quite often is shown to be the sensible thing to do.
I mean, to be fair, a lot of the time, the situations Rincewind finds himself in, running away is quite a reasonable option.
It's just the issue is he doesn't think where he's running to, and then he runs into worse stuff. But that's partly the comedy because the whole point is it's farce, and it's a bit like somebody tries to get out of something, gets into something worse. Like that's the farce of Rincewind books.
He's he runs away from sumo wrestlers, ends up being made to be a servant in the kitchen. But in some respects, there's stuff like, because he does try and help, and in fact his cynicism is quite useful, and that's where again him and Two Flowers foils to each other. Because he's not trying to harm anyone, he's not judging anyone, he's just trying to get to safety. And he points out to the rebellion why their plan is a bad idea. Yeah. Because they're a bit like, oh, well, when we rise up, we'll help the poor. It's like, how you help the poor? Oh, well, he's like, oh, you're going to ask them what they want? Like, no, they don't know what we want. We ought to speak for them. He's like, oh, interesting that. And also his cynicism is useful because basically the rebels are captured and in the dungeon, and then somehow the doors are unlocked, and somehow there's swords. The guards drop down dead, which some of the rebels think it's the Great Wizard doing it,
and the Great Wizard's like, no. Well, he's basically there going, that's bait.
Yes, very much.
He's there going, this doesn't just happen. I've not done this. You don't just find a load of swords lying around. Clearly this is a trap. Go back to your cells and I will scout. So it's not like he's always running away. He doesn't care about anyone. He's just trying to help out.
He was only scouting because he wanted to run away. And then,
then he ran into,
And then Two Flowers' older daughter insisted on accompanying him, and that's why he ends up.
Yes, because she's the one who kind of understood what he's like from the story. Yes. That he's not the Great Wizard, but also that they need a Great Wizard to believe in. Because that's the other thing, there's a legendary Great Wizard, and Rincewind's kind of become that without in any way wanting to.
Yes.
And in fact, that's the other thing, when people try to put their faith in him, he's like, no, don't. Please don't put your faith in me. You shouldn't just believe in these things. Don't put your faith in. Well, again, it's where his cynicism goes a bit, because at one point Butterfly, says something about causes are worth dying for, and Rincewind's like, no, because you've only got one life, but you can pick up another 5 causes on any street corner. And she's like, well, how can you live with a philosophy like that? And Rincewind's like, continuously.
It's very straightforward. I continue living, and that is,
But I think it's interesting. Rincewind, again, he doesn't really interact with the Horde so much, but is a bit of a counterpoint to that whole pleasant masculinity.
Some argument could be said that he doesn't really interact with the plot a lot, really.
Well, he is the one who stops the rebels from falling into the trap.
Yes, true, yes.
And I mean, the thing at the end, which is...
We'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that.
I think he represents a different form of masculinity than the other stuff that's been put in his book.
Very much so, yes. Yeah.
And I think it's reasonable to have that as a counterpoint. Yes. And again, he's also a counterpoint to all these idealistic rebels. Oh, we're going to do all this. And he's a bit like, no, you need to think about things. And also, don't you speak for other people because you don't like the nobles doing that.
We also have the counterpoint of Rincewind continuously fantasizing about potatoes.
Yes.
So at the beginning of the book, he's on a desert island. Obviously, we've been stuck there for a while, and I mean, it's a little.
It's incredibly tropey and like, ugh.
Yeah, these women appear who are from a nearby island who need him to come with them to
because they've lost all their menfolk.
But the obviously the implication is that they want to take Rincewind back to help repopulate their island, and all Rincewind can think about is potatoes.
He has also lived a largely celibate life, so it's
True.
all a bit.
Which is again a counterpoint very much to the Horde, who. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll stop with that. Shall we go on to something a little bit nicer?
Hex!
There we go.
Hex!
So Hex becomes more of a thing now.
I love Hex. Hex is awesome. Last time we saw Hex it was an ant calculating machine without a name, and now it has evolved. And I think evolved is potentially the right word for it, into this computation engine with ants, a beehive, fish tank. It's various things that go beep and pop and spin round. And half of them, they don't know what they do. The other half of them, they're not sure how they got there.
There's the aquarium. So if it's taken a long time to do something, you just watch the aquarium.
Yeah.
There's the thing that spins round and round.
Yeah.
There's a lot of 90s PC references, basically.
But also, I like this idea because they say, the idea that the books become more... The magical books become more and more sentient and develop as they go on. This is happening to this thing calculating engine. It's in the high energy magic building. It's just feeding off the magic and just becoming more and more something.
Does it have bees now?
It does have bees. Yes, it has the hive. It doesn't have the fluffy teddy bear yet. That's next.
And of course, we mostly see Hex through the point of view of Ponder Stibbins, who is obviously the faculty member who's the youngest and actually involved in the high energy magic building. Is it a building or a department? Wherever it is. The thing that's basically comp sci. And so we kind of see Ponder thinking about Hex and Ponder trying to talk about it. And Righel's just there as a bit like, I don't understand this, what's this? So, very classic, like, computers, what? No.
Yeah.
Which was a position one could have more in the 90s.
Well, yes.
But there's one bit where Ponder says he, and Righel's like, don't you mean it? And Ponder's like, that's what I said. Because Ponder's obviously still a bit abashed by how this is all going.
Yeah, I just think Hex is a great idea. The idea that you've got they've developed this computation engine that can do huge amounts can cast spells. Towards the end, the reason they find Rincewind again is because Hex just continuously casts divination spells.
Wasn't that how they found him in the first place?
A little bit. And they do the maths on the spell on how to get. And
I feel a bit like Hex. Yeah, it's sort of like taking computation to magic, because there's various things in this, and we'll get to some of the other stuff later, where the magic's kind of increased, because it's like suddenly we can do long range teleportation spells. It's like. And they do kind of imply it does take quite a lot of effort, but it's suddenly we can transport people across like vast distances of the disc. It's a bit like that Star Trek film where they can suddenly transport people to different star systems without a hitch. So I'm like, that seems useful. You should do that in other things, Star Trek. It's like...
I think, to be fair, we do see some of the drawbacks to it that possibly means that they're not looking to do too much.
They do laminate a kangaroo.
Yeah. But so, yeah, I love Hex, and I think... that may have also sort of fed into my enjoyment of the Charles Stross Laundry Files series of books, which is again about magic and computers, and it's a whole less ants involved in the Charles Stross books. So yes, Hex is great. Just read the bits in this book about Hex, and you'll be fine.
Well, that's you have to wait for all of other stuff. It's only there a little bit, but yes.
No. We'll just edit everything else out.
Okay. Very much less sense.
Do you want to talk about Lord Hong, our villain of the piece?
Yes. So he is the antagonist of the Book of Incredibly Unlikable Heroes. So it's this idea. He's this very ruthless and ambitious. So he's part of this. There's these 5 big families, and he has designs on the throne, but you've got to do things the right way. And he's very civilized, but in the Egatian way, not in whatever his teacher's doing. And there's lots of stuff about like poetry and origami, because it's made clear there's one character who's an imperial tax collector.
He's tax collector, yes.
Or tax inspector or something. And there's references to like the scholars' exams that were a thing, where in order to get these administrative bureaucratic jobs, you'd also have to display a lot of cultured stuff like poetry. Mentions origami. Yeah. I don't know if that's really the thing that you had to do, but he mentions it. That's also these Asian things. Let's just chuck it in there.
Haikus. calligraphy.
Yeah,
you name it. It's
been kind of chucked in.
Yeah.
But the idea is that he's this very peerless guy. He's peerless at everything. There's various points where people are trying to assassinate him, and he'll be there talking to a messenger who's already terrified. And then he'll just pull out his sword, which in my head was a katana because that's just the vibe of this, and then just behead the assassin who's like behind him. And so this idea that he's totally in control and aware of everything, and he's this very cool, calm, collected guy. So again, a little bit maybe veterinary-ish, but he's also the first villain we have who has secret dress-up, which will be a thing later, because it turns out he's obviously aware of what's outside the wall and all of that. And so he and it keeps me references to, he's going to go do the thing. No, he'll hold off the pleasure, and it's clearly some sort of secret vice he has. And you're like, well, what's this guy's vice going to be? And it's basically dressing up as an Ankh-Morpork noble. Like, he's just doing dress-up. And I think... it's a bit problematic that he looks at Ankh-Morpork and goes, oh, yes, that's what I aspire to be. It's like... Because, he wants to go and take them over, but he imagines he will turn up and they'll be very impressed by him. Oh, look at this guy. Whereas, in fact, this isn't a text, it's kind of funny. They're a bit like, if he turned up in Ankh-Morpork, they'd immediately be like, look at that toff, either brick at him.
Yeah.
So it's this illusion of grandeur, but it does seem a little problematic that rather than going, oh, yes, we shall take arrogation civilization to the world, which would be a very megalomaniac thing to do, but very in keeping with this kind of villain, he actually wants to be more Ankh-Morporkish. It's like, but why would that be? And I guess maybe it's because it's exotic to him, but it's not really. It just seems a bit odd, a bit like, well, all right. But yes, villains with secret dress-up or weird complexes about Ankh-Morpork will come up later. It also seems that because the revolution is kind of his own psyops.
Yes.
There is they don't even call themselves revolution. Well, they call themselves the Red Army after the legend, don't they? So they're kind of his psyops. And he actually has the one guy in it who always seems to be urging people to do the most action but never doing it himself is a plant.
Dun, dun, dun.
Well, yeah. Yeah, is basically in there and Lord Hong's telling him what to do, and he's, basically the Fed. But it does seem a little bit like he's used to being the most intelligent and ahead of the game and thinking outside the box person in this society where everyone's very set in their place. And so when some people turn up who aren't from there, he can't really deal with it.
Rincewind primarily. Rincewind, as we said earlier, Rincewind can just looks at things and going, no, but that's obviously... We're not doing that. That's silly. Because the idea was when they were getting out of the rebels would get out of the jail, they would go rushing off to kill the emperor because that was what they were being G'd up.
That's what Lord Hong wanted them to do. Yeah.
And then get captured by because the emperor would already be dead, but that's fine. We got the people down to
Well, these guys did it. Yeah. Definitely wasn't plotted by any noble.
No. It was definitely not the Lord Hong that did it beforehand. Just definitely these guys. And Rincewind sees right through that immediately. It goes
because he senses danger.
And even when he's kind of made to go find the emperor, and he walks in and goes, nope, that's a dead body, I'm going that way.
But again, it's sort of him help, because he does kind of want to get away, but he also does kind of want to help, because it's a bit later, because obviously Cohen was going in to kill the Emperor, but this has already happened, so that's a complicating factor. But he does warn Cohen about all the poison.
Yes, he's about to... Because
Cohen was just going to eat some food.
Cohen's about to, and Lord Hong just goes, well, there's a way to get rid of this. Large lumps of meat that they want, we'll just put some sizzling, very, very hot sauce. And of course, Rincewind, in his farcical chase to get away from things, ends up in the right place to how, as of course the plot demands, and Rincewind helps destabilize the fight.
So what happens is clearly the Emperor's been killed. It's all a bit confusing. There are these old men here. So basically, the sort of 5 big families mass their armies. So there's 5 armies, and then versus 7 old men.
Yeah,
and that
and a
seems,
geography teacher.
Yeah, and that seems a bit silly. Lord Hong doesn't understand something like a whisper campaign because they just don't seem to really have that sort of stuff there. So Rincewind has the idea of like, well, I think I can do something that helps. You've got this great thing where, you've got stuff like, because War of the Four Horsemen does appear, briefly with some of his kids, but perhaps it describes, you get the horsemen of smaller events. So in the case of panic, the 4 horsemen of panic are misinformation, rumour, gossip, and most powerfully, denial. Because what Rincewind has everyone on their side do is go into all the camps of the armies, because they're just camped around.
And bearing in mind they're also mostly children. Very easy
to... Well, the rebels are kids.
Yeah, mostly children,
But Rincewind and the others go around too,
Rincewind aims for a very specific target, and that would be disembowel myself honourably, Dibler.
Oh, yeah. That's true. Who will spread the word?
Because knowing that he basically stands there and goes, No, definitely there are.
The whole message is there are definitely not any hungry ghosts beyond the wall fighting with these 7 old men who are facing 5 armies. That's definitely not happening. That they are not there.
There are definitely not millions of them. Definitely no. There are definitely no.
And then you tell somebody who's going to go everywhere, like Dibbler.
And you basically you make sure everyone knows there is definitely no hungry ghosts.
And of course, Lord Hong's not dealt with anyone else scheming that much, it seems. So he's not. So at first, they sort of say, "Well, why is everyone talking about this?" And then the army the noblemen start officially saying, "Well, there definitely aren't."
Yes, definitely.
There definitely aren't any, and they're like, "Well, now they're saying officially there aren't any." And everyone's like, "But why would you? Why would you deny them?" What?
Also the fact that it is a well-known fact of the world that beyond the walls are
hungry ghosts. There's no people. It's just hungry ghosts.
So it's quite reasonable for there to be invisible hungry ghosts fighting on these barbarian.
And if
side.
they say, "Well, you can't see any," it's like, "Well, no, because they're invisible."
That's kind of the title there.
So Rincewind's kind of doing his own sort of whole... I mean, Rincewind can spread panic. That's how he lives, really. And then the desertions only start, though, when the army is suddenly realising that denying it is not actually doing what it should do, and people are not listening properly to this. They start saying, okay, well, they change tack, but not as people who are skilled at this, and say... Well, it's fine because we have the ghosts of all our ancestors fighting on our side, and they will fight those ghosts, and they're all with us right now.
Yes,
and then the desertion starts.
Yeah, it's like Lord Hong goes, right. Okay, so this this great idea. It's fine. We'll just tell them, we've got our own ghosts.
We'll counter invisible ghosts with invisible ghosts,
which. It's not a bad idea, but a large proportion of the armies is like, I don't want to face my ancestors, and
because again, the point is taking the idea of ancestor worship.
Yeah,
I quite also like. This is quite a nice phrase. People aren't sure what to do when faced with the capriciousness of ghosts.
Yes,
capriciousness of ghosts is just quite a nice thing to say. But the point is that Lord Hong is not used to other people messing with people because he's usually the one doing it, and he doesn't have the counter for that. So
and in some respects, it's nice to see Rincewind, kind of getting involved in even if it is just to.
Well, that's where his skills are useful. Yeah. So he understands enough of this. I guess we should probably go into the ending.
Yes.
I mean, it's mentioned fairly early on when Teach is scouting outside the capital that there is a perfectly round hill behind the Forbidden City, and we went to that exhibit at the British Museum.
It was a very nice exhibition.
So it was very clear what is under that hill.
We do, because throughout...
Could it be made of terracotta?
Throughout the book, they're talking about the Great Wizard when the
first Emperor.
One
sun mirror.
Yes. Brought together, created the Gaetan Empire. He did it with the Red Army.
Who were made out of the soil.
He captured lightning and formed soldiers from the soil.
Yeah, the wizard did.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like, we know where this is going.
Yeah. So everyone's lining up for this battle, and it's still just 7, 8 old guys versus this army. But then there's the thing with the butterflies, which I mentioned. Yeah, the quantum butterflies.
So throughout the book, it starts off with the lady casting a quantum butterfly onto the board of the game that she's playing with Fate. And we've had mention of quantum butterflies before, and it's playing to the quantum effect.
It's the chaos theory thing, butterfly flaps its wings in the storm.
Yeah, and in this world, they have these butterflies called quantum butterflies. They have fractal wings. Their wings are fractal, so they're infinite, and their main defense mechanism is that they can just create weather patterns. So at one point, one gets startled by Rincewind and just dumps a load of rain on top of him.
Yeah, I mean, I assume it was just the chaos theory joke, but yes, there's clearly more stuff behind it.
Yeah, yes. But yeah, so and so towards the end, we get this big flocking of quantum butterflies.
They create like a weird, because everyone's like, oh, there's a weird cloud, but what happens is they seem to create a big circle around the battlefield place, and it's almost like a gold ring all the way around. Yeah. And then they make a big storm. And it mostly seems to be kind of for atmosphere a bit initially, and it's not clear why they're doing it, except I guess that it's the Deus Ex Machina, but the Deus was set up at the beginning.
Yeah, I think this is the idea it's a big migration of these quantum butterflies.
Why would they be in a circle if it was migration?
I think this is I think you're supposed to picture.
Also, if it's migration, it happened regularly, they'd be used to it.
Okay, but I think you're supposed to picture this big flock of butterflies
that look like a cloud,
monarch butterflies, and they come together at this point, and then we get this big.
Yeah, Rincewind's kind of gotten away from the battle, and he's gone up the big round hill because that seems to be the main safe place. And then there's a
To be fair, he does identify quite rightly that the large metal structure on the top is not the place to be standing in the middle of a storm.
Yes. So, and yeah, what happens is he ends up through various things falling down and ends up in the chamber underneath and this is where the magic's a bit weird, because there's been no mention of magic so far in the Gated Empire apart from this legend of the Great Wizard.
And the luggage.
Well, that's just Sapient Pearwood, though.
But it's magic.
That's it's not magic because they have them.
But it's the only other magical thing that we really see.
It's not treated as magic. It's
no,
just
I know it's not treated as magic, but it's the only other.
And then he stumbles into this place with all these. The word terracotta isn't used, but basically like golems in the shape of men. But then they said they're not like Ankh-Morpork golems; they're a bit different. And then Rincewind finds a helmet and some boots, and basically it's a fancy VR system. And there's no indication anything like this should exist.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it is very 90s, the kind of that kind of VR headset and gloves to control, and they throw in some boots to control it.
The thing is, you kind of know something like this is coming, because just before this, Rincewind, when he leaves everyone, is a bit like, don't put your trust in the Great Wizard. I'm not fated to do anything. I'm not involved in this. I mean, it's not fate, admittedly, he's doing it. It's luck. And when he's protesting so much, it's like he is going to run right into doing this. It's like, so it's coming.
Yeah, but it does feel a little bit out of place. This idea you've got these symbols on the gloves, and he can see through the eyes.
It's very yes, because if he puts it on, he sort of sees through the warriors. And then when he moves, they move.
Yeah. And he ends up climbing out of the. Well,
because the point is that the storm hits
building at the top of the
building at the top has a lightning rod, and the storm hits it, so that powers them all up. And
and then he goes stomping out, partly accidentally, I think mostly accidentally. It doesn't feel
he doesn't feel like he's not trying to be like, I've got control of these terracotta warriors, I'll use them to scare off those armies, threatening my friends. He just kind of seems to, I'm not sure what's happening, I'll blunder away now, but also controlling an army. Yeah. It's a bit flat,
I think the ending, this is the problem with the ending.
He didn't mean to do anything heroic.
It's awful.
It didn't even feel like a choice. It just felt like a series of, I'm not quite sure what's happening.
Rincewind just ends up not being the hero, but being the solution at the end, but through no action of his own other than running away, which I suppose is an action of Rincewind. But it just doesn't feel like there's.
It's not like in Sorcery where he turns around and takes a stand. He's just not sure what he's doing, and then somehow manages to bring the end about.
Well, I suppose it doesn't even bring the end about.
Doesn't even feel like he's got a massive amount of agency in it.
No, I mean he kind of the armies, the 5 armies get defeated mostly because these giant terracotta robots, for no better, trash a load of things, and the armies run away more than actually get really defeated.
Well, because Great Wizards raise the Red Army, so well, no, we're not fighting that.
So in the end, actually the ending, Lord Hong is still there. He's
again so complicated that Rincewind is then teleported into a different book.
Yes, Lord Hong is there. Basically, Two Flower wants to kill him for the previous mentioned, and takes Rincewind captive. Which
is kind of a bit of a dark turn on the part of Two Flower that you didn't see coming. So it's like, you killed my wife ages ago and I'm quite angry, so I'd like to... And it's like, okay, but he still seems to do it in this kind of mild and serious way. But
so takes Rincewind hostage, I've got the Great Wizard, thinks he's going to... And, Rincewind gets teleported into the next book. And what is returned... So at the start of the book, when Rincewind gets swapped to the Gated Empire...
They have to teleport back in a similar way.
They get a cannon.
I mean, I don't know that's what it is.
No, it's called a barking dog, but it's basically a cannon, a big firework that was lit at the time because they were doing a test, and of course the faculty being the faculty, they do actually pinch the fuse. It doesn't go off, but they return it because they needed
Rincewind, yeah.
So they return it lit because the faculty they wanted to return it in the exact state it was when they received it. So Lord Hong just gets blown up by a cannon.
But accidentally.
It's so...
And the thing is, obviously the Emperor was killed. Cohen tried to be the Emperor kind of by subterfuge and then sort of have a fight about it. But we don't really see what then happens in the Empire. Is Cohen and the Horde in charge now? Because this was kind of their retirement plan. The idea was if they ran the Empire, they didn't have to fight anymore because they'd have servants in the palace.
I think the implication is that they certainly start... running the Empire.
But then there's also the rebellion, or the Red Army, not the terracotta Red Army, the golems, but the young people who were idealistic and being led. Are they involved now? It just doesn't...
it's.
But various things happen, but you don't kind of get a conclusion to a lot of it, and then the main character just gets sent to the next book in the series.
Well, his series, not literally the next book in the series, but
I mean, should we just do a quick go over of maybe some of the jokes and things, end on a positive? There are some good jokes in there. So there's one bit where Cohen says, "They say it's a time of portents." And Rincewind goes, "I'm surprised they've got time to worry about the state of their camping equipment." There's also a bit with peacocks. It mentions that...
I apologise. I've just realised, just looking through at the back of the book, there is a small paragraph where Fate and the lady do talk about it.
I thought there was something
it being a draw, but I still don't feel that that's enough of a framing device for the whole book.
But it was at the end, though, so it does frame it.
Yes, I apologise. I did. Yes.
Yeah, I think the thing is, we, for reasons mentioned, we found this book hard to recommend, and it probably is fairly skippable.
Except for the bits about Hex. Go and read the bits about Hex.
Okay. I think if you have Hex later, it still explains what it is.
It is I think it's a disappointment.
Again, it's not necessarily out of place in 90s fantasy, but it doesn't feel like the quality we expect from Pratchett.
Yeah, I think we hold him to a higher standard, and I think rightly so, but I think this one, unfortunately. We'll move on from that to better things. So our next one will be Masquerade, Bring Back the Witches, or at least 2 of the 3 from previous books. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Dining Table Discworld. You can find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Dining Table Discworld. You can also find us on BlueSky at dtdiscworld. All our other contact information and credits for our music can be found in our show notes. Thank you for listening again, and we'll see you in our next episode.